you going to do? There has to be a sequel. You have to get them all off there.
Well, you know, it's certainly the sequel has been discussed by almost everyone, but at the moment there are no plans for one. So at least for now, there's only one Jurassic Park.
Based on Michael Crichton's novel of the same name, Jurassic Park presented a grounded, thrilling adventure about the capitalist dangers of hypothetical genetic technology, wrapped in a heartfelt journey of learning to become a parent. It was the highest-grossing film of all time, won 3 Academy Awards for its groundbreaking effects, and was met with almost unanimous praise. Jurassic Park wasn't a soulless commercial product. It was a captivating work of art that could be enjoyed by anyone. The film sparked enormous interest in paleontology and finally educated the mainstream world that dinosaurs were warm-blooded, fast-moving avian animals.
Marty, one final question. I know, we all know that Jurassic Park just opened, but there is already talk of a sequel?
Yes, and you know, with numbers like these, Lauren, let's face it, I don't think we're going to see Jurassic Park turn extinct at the box office. You can look for Universal to try for a sequel.
Work and people would like it, but I had no idea that it would take off in the way that it has. It's become sort of this tidal wave type phenomenon. No stopping it.
And he said, do you want a death scene or a sequel?
And you talked to your bank manager and you thought?
Well, my bank manager said a sequel.
I think so.
I've never done a sequel, and I've always thought that probably I shouldn't in terms of a book. You know, whether there's a movie sequel is another question. But I've got so many letters from kids saying, what about the sequel, that it's inevitable that in answering all the letters saying, I've never done a sequel and I don't know, you end up thinking about it a lot. So of course I've been thinking about it. Actual problem, because it has to be the same but different.
Yeah.
Now if it's really the same, then it's the same. And if it's really different, then it's not a sequel.
Yeah, something else.
So it's in some kind of funny intermediate territory.
Yeah.
The audiences are quick to get jaded, so now the question is, sure, you can do dinosaurs, but what can you do with them?
Now, almost 30 years later, in a world dominated by sequels and reboots of decades-old intellectual properties, Jurassic Park is a reminder of a once untarnished franchise, currently possessing 5 canon sequels, and 5 seasons of an animated children's show, each entry further dragging the series' reputation through the mud. This year's Jurassic World Dominion received the worst critical response in the series' history, and another $300 million drop in box office revenue compared to its previous installment. This World Trilogy has long since entered the realm of science fiction parody, with bulletproof superpowered hybrid dinosaurs that can smile at the camera, supposedly real dinosaurs and other reptiles that barely resemble current science, absurd action scenes where human beings are launched into the air, and slow-motion moments designed to make the audience erupt in Marvel-style standing ovation. This is without acknowledging the aforementioned Netflix series, canon to the film universe, where dinosaurs are ridden and controlled like Ark Survival Evolved. When earning almost $1 billion at the box office is considered disappointing for this franchise, it seems inevitable that it will continue, jumping as many sharks as possible until consumers finally stop consuming it. But it doesn't have to be this way, and it never had to happen in the first place. Jurassic Park never needed a sequel, and now, more than ever before, it's time to stop making Jurassic Park movies.
I never split any hairs about, do I want to make a sequel to Jurassic Park? Of course I wanted to make a sequel to Jurassic Park. It was just when.
You believe it'll be bigger and better than Jurassic Park?
I can't imagine anything being bigger than that.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Were you concerned that it might not be possible to top a movie like Jurassic Park? Do you think this movie is going to top Jurassic Park?
They are back by popular demand. The dinosaurs of Jurassic Park brought director Steven Spielberg so much mail from fans that he agreed to explore The Lost World. Fans are lining up across the country with hopes of an encore performance.
Big question, how is the movie? Is it up to the first one? I have to say no on both counts. I, in fact, think the movie is a royal screw-up. I think given that Steven Spielberg has done this himself, why is the movie so sloppy technically?
We should have had more, but it's summer and mostly they want to make money and they want to sell a whole lot of merchandise.
I think from Spielberg we should have expected more, and I have to say, what a shame.
It shouldn't be controversial to say that The Lost World, both the novel and the film, were made primarily for financial reasons. Crichton was hesitant about a sequel book, and Spielberg returned as director primarily to avoid a repeat of the many awful sequels to Jaws, produced without his involvement. Most of the team between Jurassic Park and its sequel had stayed the same, maintaining a degree of tonal and aesthetic consistency. Critical response was mixed, novel included, and while it performed well financially, it couldn't reach its billion-dollar expectations.
When The Lost World opens in the States tonight, it's estimated it will be on its way to making a bone-crushing $1 billion.
Spielberg was absent for the film's premiere, and his own biography describes the film as hack work, possibly the worst film in Spielberg's directing career. Making The Lost World since his 4-year break after Schindler's List, which won him Best Director and Best Picture in the same year Jurassic Park released, Spielberg was quoted saying,
"I beat myself up, growing more and more impatient with myself. It made me wistful about doing a talking picture, because sometimes I got the feeling I was just making this big silent roar movie. I found myself saying, is that all there is? It's not enough for me."
Some of your contemporaries, good film directors, seem to me to make the same film again and again, but I perceive a growth in your work.
Yeah, with a few detours to make a Lost World once in a while, yeah.
My sequels aren't as good as my originals because I go into every sequel I've made and I'm too confident. This movie made $1 gazillion, which justifies the sequel, so I come in like it's going to be a slam dunk and I wind up making an inferior movie to the one before. I'm talking about The Lost World and Jurassic Park.
Despite these frequent criticisms, The Lost World is, to me, the only sequel worth salvaging out of this creatively bankrupt franchise. But it's undeniable that nothing has, or can, dethrone the original Jurassic Park. Even the popular fan website, Jurassic Outpost, lists favorite sequel underneath each staff member, instead of favorite movie, because the answer is obvious. 9 of these 12 people chose The Lost World as their answer. Unlike later entries without the guidance of Spielberg as director, the second film is still masterfully thrilling and tense, feeling purposeful and inspired, a modern homage to pulpy dinosaur stories of old, like King Kong, while maintaining some of the wit and, dare I say, class of Jurassic Park. The score from returning composer John Williams continues to delight with new, memorable themes, refraining from the iconic melodies that audiences were already familiar with.
You kind of have that little touch of nostalgia. In a way, it almost makes you miss the first movie while you're watching the second one.
Generally, The Lost World makes attempts to differentiate itself from its predecessor, utilizing a new setting and few returning characters, not content with naming itself Jurassic Park 2. There is still a genuine passion for the dinosaurs and their behavior, especially their roles in family groups, a mirror to Ian Malcolm caring for his daughter. Where Jurassic Park was about creating life and becoming a parent, The Lost World is about being one. This, of course, does not excuse the film's uneven pacing and noticeable shift into schlocky action movie territory, slowly increasing the unbelievable spectacle and body count for later films to follow. A jarring but enjoyable climax in San Diego is concluded with a sentimental statement that the dinosaurs should be left alone on Isla Sorna, a beautiful shot of the animals living together naturally and undisturbed. A perfect ending to a solid yet unnecessary sequel, perhaps a metaphor from Spielberg, Koepp, and Crichton themselves that Jurassic Park, the franchise, should be left alone as well. But if you've already made one sequel, what's stopping you from making even more?
Spinosaurus is the guy on the block from this point on. We have a big fight, and T-Rex gets his ass kicked.
Going to kind of replace T-Rex, and so we actually went after a dinosaur that literally could cause an extinction on the island.
Joe always said Spino's not real bright. You know, he's not as smart as T-Rex. He's kind of a big, dumb oaf.
It's very much more sort of adrenaline-rushed, action-packed, big popcorn ride.
Joe Johnston, he was really decisive. He knew exactly the film he wanted to make.
5 weeks out from shooting, we decided to throw the script out and start over with a completely new idea.
And there were actually phone calls where I called my agent and said, look, you have to get me off this movie. I don't care what it takes. I don't care if it's the end of my career. You have to get me off tomorrow. But to start over and start shooting a $100 million movie without a script, you want to blow your brains out. It was actually much harder on the production designer than it was on me. He had to literally build things sometimes overnight. He almost hung himself.
Long before an era of Chris Pratt sticking his hand into the air, Jurassic Park 3 was rock bottom. A soulless, empty film about absolutely nothing, with a bland, grey aesthetic and ugly dinosaur redesigns that give the appearance of a Sci-Fi Channel TV movie. The choice to kill off the film's only featured Tyrannosaur was an apt metaphor for the death of Jurassic Park, even changing the logo across the film and its merchandise. This was Jurassic Park's first true step into the world of B-grade schlock, almost indistinguishable from the low-budget monster movies that the original film stood so proudly in defiance of. Crichton was no longer involved to co-write and hadn't even watched the film a year after it had released, and didn't want to make any more Jurassic Park books. David Koepp offered some input, but did not return to write, citing a lack of worthy ideas to contribute.
I think the two movies bookend each other really well, and if there was going to be a third one, somebody would have to have a big idea first.
We did talk about it, and if I thought I had a great idea, I'd sign up in a minute, but I did the first two, and 2 movies on one subject is a lot. Because it's hard enough to do 1 movie on a subject. I did 2, and I just felt like I used up all my good ideas, and if I had something really valuable to contribute, I'd love to.
John Williams did not return to compose the film's score. Spielberg offered the directorial role to Joe Johnston, who had a miserable experience, partially because there was no completed script.
We did not have a final script until after we wrapped the movie. We had a script for the day that we were shooting, and maybe the next day, and sometimes a week ahead of time, but we never had a story that had a beginning, middle, and end while we were making the film. Steven stopped by the first time we did a shot for our first big special effects sequence, and he left saying, boy, I'm glad I don't have to do this. Making Jurassic Park 3 was a living hell on a daily basis.
It's no secret that the production of Jurassic Park 3 was an absolute nightmare, and it was deservedly hated by most critics and audiences upon release, and grossed the lowest out of the entire series. Without the lead creative people in charge blatantly admitting they had no ideas left, it was clearly time for the IP to be laid to rest. The third film has nothing to say, nothing interesting happens, and it could be removed from the series chronology with 0 narrative repercussions. Despite numerous attempts in the mid-2000s to continue the series with a Jurassic Park 4, featuring parachuting counter-terrorist human-dinosaur hybrids, Jurassic Park was over, and clearly for the better.
I suspect this is the last, and 3 seems to be, you know, the definitive number.
Unless it was Rocky.
Right.
These islands and these dinosaurs, and I think now it's time to take it off in a different direction, and I know that Steven has an idea that will do that when he decides it's time to make it. You know.
Because of budget and script issues, the film was delayed. The original script was written by Rise of the Planet of the Apes writers Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver. However, it sounds like director Colin Trevorrow and his safety not guaranteed writer Derek Connolly have made significant changes to that draft.
There's a whole bunch of drama surrounding this thing. They changed scripts, they fired crew, they decided to change directions.
I'd said this before, I have zero interest in any more Jurassic Parks. You know, I'm not going to see it.
I get excited because something's awesome. And I don't necessarily think about all of the reasons why how it might be interpreted by people. And I just think it's the most epic Jurassic Park death I could possibly imagine.
If Jurassic Park is Jaws, then Jurassic World is the Meg. The genre has firmly shifted from tense thriller into overproduced sci-fi action. 18 years after The Lost World, Spielberg returned as producer with some terrible story ideas, some borrowed from the scrapped Jurassic Park 4 treatments, while the up-and-coming Colin Trevorrow was appointed as director. David Koepp is still nowhere to be seen after The Lost World, and Michael Crichton had passed away in 2008. Helping to kickstart the onslaught of soft reboots and legacy sequels that still thrive today, the first Jurassic World was simply a warning sign of what was yet to come. The wonder and spectacle of the original's lush jungle aesthetic is paved over with grey concrete walls and bland corporate architecture, wrapped in a blanket of cynical nostalgia. The wonder and awe of real prehistoric life is shoved to the wayside for a shiny new hybrid, while the actual dinosaurs look like colorless, wrinkly plastic. It's difficult to maintain suspension of disbelief when the film features 3D holograms, glowing laser sticks, awful CGI blood, cheesy death scenes, Chris Pratt on a motorbike with tamed raptors, and giant hamster balls designed specifically to enter the enclosures of dinosaurs with spikes and clubs on their bodies. The hero of the movie is entirely responsible for the escape of the Indominus Rex, yet the whole trilogy never once acknowledges this, instead shifting the blame onto Claire for greenlighting the hybrid in the first place. This is a valid point, but why does the Christian Pratt get a free pass when he walked into the fucking enclosure? Any feeling of horror or dread is stripped away due to the film's poor visual language, prioritizing spectacle over empathizing with our core characters in many situations. Instead of keeping the camera low to the ground at eye level with our human protagonists, it often flies up into the air, above the height of even the dinosaurs. Why are we seeing extensive close-ups on the Indominus and the escaping pterosaurs from within the aviary? There's no human perspective to relate to here. In most cases, the audience should only be seeing what the characters can see. If they can't see the dinosaurs, then neither should we, providing a bit of mystery and tension. This whole scene of the Indominus running away from the helicopter and smashing into the aviary is basically shot like she's the protagonist of the scene. It's difficult to feel trapped and afraid alongside our characters when our perspective is constantly out in the safe, open air, away from the approaching dinosaurs. The Tyrannosaur attack in Jurassic Park is a perfect opposite example of this. Almost every shot is from within the explorers with our characters. Besides some dramatic irony, such as when we see, now from the T-Rex's perspective, that she can attack the children through the ceiling. The kitchen scene is shot like a child peering over the benches, barely catching glimpses of the approaching raptors, grounding us in the terror of that scenario. Even Jurassic Park 3 remembered to keep the camera low to the ground during its own pointless dinosaur battle. World's most interesting concept is the titular theme park, metatextually reminding us that corporations would gladly reattempt a historically terrible idea so they can make more money, while also expecting us to feel joy and wonder as we witness the entire point of the first two films thrown out the window. Masrani mentions that this was Hammond's dying wish, which is a total reversal of his arc in the first film and his final message in The Lost World. The functional park rarely impacts the story that meaningfully, only becoming relevant for a moment of pointless carnage by the escaped pterosaurs. Jurassic World is far more concerned with defanging the primary antagonists of the franchise, begging the audience to remember how good Jurassic Park was, and to please, please, please accept their heartfelt apology for Jurassic Park 3. This is a product of excess, a never-ending, unrestrained mess of boring ideas executed in the blandest, safest way possible. It's a Marvel movie with dinosaurs in it, so of course it grossed $1.6 billion and was met with positive to mixed reviews. There's an attempt at self-aware commentary surrounding the film's status as a derivative legacy sequel, a hybrid of 1,000 unfocused ideas thrust into the general public uncontrollably, that can only be defeated by acknowledging and embracing its nostalgic heritage. But this metaphor collapses when the movie itself is just not good. You can't create a story criticizing the trends of modern popular cinema while also being the exact thing you're attempting to criticize.
In this Jurassic World, you will see more dinosaurs than you've ever seen in all the other Jurassic movies combined.
We're gonna have blue.
We have the Mosasaurus. We have the T-Rex.
We're literally blowing up the island.
We have a Baryonyx in this movie. We have a Carnotaurus.
The Carnotaurus fights the Sinoceratops.
We hope that people come out with their imaginations expanded of what a Jurassic Park movie can be.
We have a brand new genetically modified dinosaur called the Indoraptor.
It's a psychopathic, murderous beast.
We have a Stygimoloch.
We just all love the Stygimoloch.
This is gonna be awesome.
(2018's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom soared the series to new heights, a darker, more mature sequel that fits perfectly in tone with Crichton's original novels, elevating Jurassic Park into terrifying gothic horror, developing the subtle commentary on genetic technology with the introduction of a human clone. That's the synopsis from die-hard Jurassic World fans who genuinely believe this film to be a misunderstood hidden gem that the layperson isn't smart enough to understand.
I rode my motorcycle through the jungle with a pack of raptors.
We're not compatible.
You can only truly appreciate Fallen Kingdom by reading 2 books that have nothing to do with it, apparently.
It throws away the premise of the entire franchise. It has returning bland characters that nobody cares about.
It's like a dumb Roger Corman movie with a budget.
Yeah. I wasn't a humongous fan of Jurassic World. That film also disappointed me, but nowhere near the same amount of disappointment I'm feeling.
This movie is so bad that it was legitimately hilarious to watch. Many people in the theater were just laughing at moments that were supposed to be taken seriously.
Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom doesn't have an original bone in its body. The most original idea it can think of is they kill off the first dinosaur that you see from the original Jurassic Park. And when that's the emotional center of your movie, I don't know what to tell you, but goddamn. This is one empty film.
They have figured out how to clone humans.
Oh, I forgot about the whole clone girl. Oh, maybe I'm a D.
What are you doing?
Writing the script to the next Jurassic World movie.
In reality, the series' 5th entry dealt further irreparable damage to the image of Jurassic Park as a franchise, cementing its place as a laughingstock among other shameless corporate IPs, pushing suspension of disbelief to its absolute breaking point.
I love the Stygimoloch.
Chris Pratt flops around like a rag doll next to a stream of approaching lava. There's a dinosaur auction underground with numbers ticking up in the reflection of the bad guy's glasses, a cartoon fight scene, and John Hammond's secret best friend gets smothered with a pillow. Why begin with a subdued, atmospheric title card when we can use a shockingly ugly 3D logo with overbearing, epic music instead? Soldiers need not attack someone by aiming a gun at them and shooting bullets. Instead, they could aim said gun at their target, mark them with a laser pointer, not shoot any bullets, and tell an idiotic dinosaur hybrid to maul them to death instead. The supposed successor to the Indominus Rex, as smart as a raptor, that can't even turn corners without slamming into walls. Be sure to contain it in a cage that can be opened with a sliding lock, and not any higher form of security. Calling this a horror film is frankly ridiculous. There's no feeling of tension, thanks in part to the incredibly bland characters. There's barely even a coherent story, and certainly no clear justification for a dinosaur expedition on the same day as Mount Sibo's eruption. Unlike the previous film, it at least features appreciably engaging cinematography, not counting the shots ripped off from Jurassic Park, and a decent opening scene that captures the horror tone, but has nothing to do with the rest of the film. The moment when the power is rebooted by one set of characters, while the others are hiding from the Indoraptor, is just the same scene again from Jurassic Park, when Ellie restores the systems in the maintenance shed as Grant, Lex, and Tim are climbing the electric fence. Receiving deservedly negative reviews, Fallen Kingdom was the point of no return. Even its short film aftermath, Battle at Big Rock, couldn't resist incredibly cheesy, superhero-style Deus Ex Machina, and continued recycling of shots from the first two films. It also sounds like the title of a Land Before Time sequel. This was also the beginning for Camp Cretaceous, the 49-episode-long animated series. There was potential here, but a subpar first season filled with characters making terrible decisions and dinosaurs routinely tripping over flat terrain or slamming into walls was followed by a barrage of increasing absurdity in the seasons to come. A child gets into a one-on-one battle with a Carnotaurus, then saved by his neon blue pet Ankylosaur. Dinosaurs only ever successfully attack the villains, which strips the entire show of any tension. Season 3 introduces another horrifically ugly hybrid that I'm supposed to want toys of, and the audience is expected to mentally slot this into the same timeline as Jurassic Park. But no one could possibly understand Dominion without watching Camp Cretaceous first to see how Dodgson found the Barbasol can, because every minuscule detail of modern entertainment needs to be explained in some form of pointless, expanded universe filler content. I cannot relate to adults finding unironic enjoyment from this show. It wants to be a goofy cartoon for children while also being canon to the films and offering vain attempts at horror. The first moments of the final season see 6 children who have survived on a dinosaur island alone for 6 months, accompanied by a tamed Kentrosaurus, surrounded by an army of humanoid robot dinosaurs that can talk and shoot lasers, in an artificial biodome forest on another dinosaur island that isn't Isla Nublar or Isla Sorna. The first on-screen text after the episode title reads, "Based on the novel Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton." This is beyond parody.
The trained raptors running alongside him on the motorcycle, it really made me go, oh, maybe there really was no more story to tell beyond Lost World.
Funny enough, with the Jurassic movies, though, there is a consistent diminishing of quality as it goes on.
Sure, Jurassic Park 3 was the weak, the ugly stepchild in the family. Sure, absolutely. But it's still giant dinosaurs marching around and eating people. Come on.
You need to get the dinosaurs into the world, just not with the protagonists doing it for stupid reasons because they're trying to help.
I mean, it would be amazing if they came into the States and there's dinosaurs everywhere. It would be great.
Nice.
Once we get to the ending of this movie, I'm like, bring it on. We're in full stupid mode.
I can't do it anymore.
This is what everything has been leading to.
Jurassic World Dominion is the culmination of the franchise. It concludes a story that Steven Spielberg started telling in 1993.
Or you could stop making Jurassic Park sequels because they're never gonna measure up to the first movie.
Jurassic World Dominion is the movie that Trevorrow wanted to make from the beginning, requiring 2 subpar films in order to set up the absolute worst entry of the entire series. Despite having the longest runtime of the franchise, almost 2.5 hours with a lengthier extended cut, it's a film about nothing. The entire premise of the narrative, dinosaurs spreading across the planet after Fallen Kingdom, is never resolved, shifting the global threat to giant locusts devouring the food supply, because a few wild dinosaurs in rural locations doesn't really make for an extinction-level threat to mankind. Describing this film as the closest in tone to the original is frankly delusional, because Jurassic Park demonstrated that while the dinosaurs are incredible animals, we shouldn't have brought them back to begin with. Dominion instead offers the idea that we should simply learn to live with it, adopt complacency about catastrophic worldwide change. If anything, the film's conclusion presents this outcome positively, as something grand and epic. It's a good thing that dozens of species have been reintroduced into a foreign environment, upsetting the balance of modern nature. Compare this to topical, real-world issues threatening us and our planet, such as the pandemic or climate change, and this film's message, intentional or not, is shockingly tone-deaf. I suppose these are the classic Michael Crichton themes that everyone keeps talking about.
You think, yes, we're getting warmer, but it's not going to lead to the catastrophe. That's what you've just said.
Right.
Changing the setting from lush, secluded islands to familiar civilization is backpedaled after an unnecessary action sequence in Malta, shifting the focus to dinosaurs in a lush, secluded facility in the mountains of Italy. It may as well just be another island. It's better than the alternative, like the Star Wars-esque underground dinosaur fight club where Chris Pratt interrogates a man being crucified by 2 dinosaurs, followed by the aforementioned chase scene that only functions to get our least favorite characters on the plane to Biosyn. Taking dinosaurs off the islands has always been a potential threat throughout the franchise, ever since the first novel. But there is a world of difference between a few small animals like compies and raptors being found on beaches and farmland, like in the books, to giant apex predators rampaging through town square alongside a chaotic motorcycle chase. There's no narrative potential in this premise other than endless B-movie carnage, a far cry from what Jurassic Park is actually about, especially when you consider the first film had a body count of only 5 people.
Who cares whether or not they are getting off the island? That is not really the threat to me, whether they get off the island or not. I mean, obviously they didn't breed any pterodactyls, because they didn't want any getting off the island.
If this story is truly what Crichton wanted, as the fanbase likes to claim, then he would have already made it, or at least been involved with the production of further film sequels after The Lost World. Crichton wanted nothing to do with Jurassic Park anymore. Maybe let's not speak on behalf of a dead man. The return of legacy characters, Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm, while not grossly embarrassing, still feels hollow and cynical, arbitrarily reuniting them conveniently in time for the big nostalgic finale, in quotes, of this new trilogy, and at the right time to try and win over fans of the original films who likely despised Fallen Kingdom. It also needs to acknowledge the baffling decisions made in Jurassic Park 3, only to reverse them at the end, pairing up Grant and Sattler for a moment of fan service, something that should have already been established after the end of Jurassic Park. Needing to address criticism from prior films and apply a band-aid fix in later sequels should be a clear indication towards a franchise having run out of steam. This is taken to the extreme with Dominion's blatant retconning of Fallen Kingdom, not a sequel from 20 years beforehand, but its immediate predecessor. Maisie's nature as a clone exists solely for shock value, and an excuse for some sequel bait. It doesn't tell us anything meaningful about the characters or provide them with emotional arcs, and its slapdash attempt at tying in with the original Jurassic Park storyline reeks of poorly constructed fan fiction. Dominion's solution was to reveal that Maisie isn't a clone, but is instead a clone, an asexual reproduction of her mother, who, of course, was secretly always a part of the series from the beginning, working in the labs on Sauna alongside Henry Wu during the construction of Jurassic Park, and becoming good friends with Ellie Sattler. Maisie is treated almost like a mythical Christ figure. Everyone knows her by name.
I'm Maisie Lockwood.
Maisie Lockwood. Hi, Maisie.
She's immune to all disease so that she has plot relevance, and she's literally an unexplained virgin birth.
Where's my daughter? She wasn't yours to begin with.
She's the most valuable intellectual property on the planet.
The Jurassic Park fan wiki can't even properly explain the human clone situation themselves, citing unsourced information about Charlotte, Maisie's mother, being infertile, and Hammond disapproving of her pregnancy trials, details that are simply not in the film. As for Beta, Blue's asexually reproduced baby, why would Jurassic World's latest breed of raptors be intentionally designed with the ability to reproduce indefinitely and uncontrollably, especially after the breeding outbreaks in all-female dinosaurs from the use of amphibian DNA? Did Charlotte also have monitor lizard DNA? Because otherwise, how did she reproduce without sperm? Why would she willingly clone herself instead of having a normal baby? The film suggests that her augmentations to Maisie's DNA were achieved with the genetic research from Jurassic Park, but the details surrounding the initial pregnancy are vague at best. Perhaps Dominion's most pointless moment is its dinosaur battle finale, where the characters have already escaped, but we still need to stick around and see if the good guy dinosaurs can kill the bad guy dinosaur. Because the dinosaurs are superheroes now, in the words of Colin Trevorrow himself. No one witnesses the final moments of Rexy killing the raptors in the first film either, but including it for the audience felt far more earned in that instance, due to her unexpected arrival inadvertently rescuing the characters from the raptors, who had been established from scene 1 as the major antagonists of the story. The T-Rex was also consistently built up as a constant presence outside of her major scenes, defending her territory, hunting Gallimimus, and being heard roaring in the distance, motivating the characters to keep moving. Conversely, this fight is unearned and unimpactful. The Giganotosaurus doesn't kill a single thing in the film. It's barely even in it, and unlike the Indominus Rex and Indoraptor before it, it's not a hybrid, even though it certainly looks like one. Describing it as the largest terrestrial carnivore is also rather dubious, scientifically speaking. The dramatic close-up of Rexy's eye as she suddenly awakens from supposed near-death, followed by the nonsensical superhero imagery of her pushing the Giga through the claws of the Therizinosaur, had me in hysterics. The Giga did not deserve to die, it simply fell victim to the Jurassic World formula, one that has run its course several times over.
I can tell you a good example. I just took my glasses off that day when you see that big dinosaur.
Yeah.
And now everyone in this film takes their glasses off at some point.
How many more times can this series repackage the same familiar set pieces? The Mosasaur leaping vertically out of the water to eat something. Chris Pratt or another character holding out their hand to Blue or some other theropod. Or the Tyrannosaur saving the day, never acting as a threat to our main characters, and having a fight scene with some other villainous dinosaur. And how many more times can it find a way to ask us, do you remember Jurassic Park? Marketing dictates that Dominion was the epic conclusion of the Jurassic saga, but the meaning behind that is unclear at best, and with such high box office results, Universal has no reason to stop, even with such abysmal critical reception. The captivating summer blockbuster is a thing of the past, as big studios continue to chase higher profits and greenlight less engaging stories.
People say, that's what I want from a cinema trip. I want to go to the cinema, I want to turn my brain off, and I want to enjoy some special effects smacking against each other. And that's fine if that's what you want, but that's not what I want. I don't want to turn my brain off. I don't.
Just look at how far these movies have come. Jurassic Park, in retrospect, feels like an independent film when contrasted against Dominion's ridiculous shootouts, high-speed vehicle chases, Chris Pratt stabbing the Giga like a video game character, and swarms of flaming locusts dropping from the sky like meteors. Wasn't the extinction imagery already the point of the previous film? Dominion's one single genuine moment of tension, one of two segments in the film capturing the familiar tone of Jurassic Park, is abruptly shattered when Chris Pratt appears off-screen to strangle the attacking Dilophosaur, followed by an electrocution from his Star Wars sidekick. A brief flash of what made Jurassic Park so special, before slapping the audience in the face to remind them, you're watching Jurassic World. This new series conceptually fails to capture the nuance and meaning inherent to the original novel and film. The danger of genetic power in Crichton's books surrounded hypothetical commercialization and mistreatment of cloned animals, and the idea of enhancing the behavior of dinosaurs for easier viewing by park guests. Dodgson mentions the idea of creating pet pygmy dinosaurs, or consumer biologicals, patented miniaturized versions of the animals for domestic households, designed only to eat InGen branded dinosaur food. These ideas were suggestions of dangerous concepts that could stem from technology powerful enough to recreate extinct life forms. They were not novels about how crazy it would be to walk down the street and get eaten by rampaging carnivorous dinosaurs, or how cool it would be to make a genetic hybrid that can create its own superpowers whenever it needs them. In all honesty, a Crichton hybrid would likely have been a sad, lonely, diseased husk of an animal, much like Hammond's dwarf elephant, an ethical statement about tampering with life and using it as a test subject for commercial ventures. But if that's what Crichton wanted the book to be about, then he would have written it that way, or made another sequel. But he didn't.
It's just like, I keep seeing that, like, oh, it's Crichton, it's Crichton. It's like, yeah, it's Crichton, but the difference between Crichton and people trying to emulate Crichton is Crichton was good at it.
You know, an idea can feel like it's within a Crichton-y universe, but if the rest of the dialogue, writing, and everything else that's written in that screenplay is as far from Crichton as can be, the movie isn't like a Michael Crichton film, is it?
Jurassic Park, the novel and the film, were about genetic technology, about ethics in advanced science, about corporate greed, about dinosaurs, and about the chaotic nature of playing God. It also featured strong character arcs, supporting the surface-level sequence of events with an engaging, emotionally satisfying story. The Jurassic World films are about nothing, except a sequence of events containing big dumb action scenes, nostalgic callbacks to better movies, and funding Chris Pratt's church.
I want to thank God. I always do that when I'm up on a big platform in front of a bunch of young faces. I say, I love God. That's my thing. I love him. And you should too. God is real. God loves you. God wants the best for you. Believe that. I do.
A major component of Jurassic Park's appeal is within its title, a theme park where guests can finally witness centuries of study accumulated into real, living, breathing dinosaurs. The experience of Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler marveling at the Brachiosaurus for the first time is one shared directly with the audience, especially those in 1993. Witnessing realistic, believable dinosaurs rendered on screen for the first time. These are real animals, real creatures that truly did exist millions of years ago. It's no secret that Jurassic Park took some creative liberties, even with the science available at the time. The velociraptors should have been renamed to Deinonychus if they were going to appear at that scale, and the Dilophosaur's frill and venom were entirely fabricated. But ultimately, Spielberg really was trying to present the most accurate dinosaurs ever put to film at the time.
Only problems that I had were with the Velociraptor and the Dilophosaurus. There, the details were somewhat questionable. The Velociraptor was too big, and the Dilophosaurus certainly didn't spit venom.
Presenting theropods as bird-like was a paradigm shift in '93, while more obvious features like feathers were still quite speculative for non-avian dinosaurs. The characters involved were genuinely enthusiastic about these creatures, experts of their creative fields discussing how their theories held up alongside seeing the real animals. The public's interest in paleontology skyrocketed, creating the Jurassic Park generation, who have grown into the current wave of leading paleontologists and paleo artists that we see today.
Jurassic Park is probably the best thing that ever happened to paleontology. More jobs, more funding, that came from Jurassic Park. I don't think we can overstate how important that was to paleontology. I probably wouldn't have my job, and a lot of my colleagues wouldn't either.
The first part of the process is doing our research, talking to paleontologists, reading all of the research, looking at all the research we can find to be paleontologically correct.
You have to make sure that the movie's credible.
When people ask me, what's a dinosaur really look like? Where can I see a dinosaur? I tell them to go see the movie Jurassic Park.
The Jurassic World films completely disregard modern paleo-accuracy to instead half-heartedly continue the established aesthetic of the original films, since many new and old species have regressed aesthetically and in their scientific accuracy. The incomplete DNA can no longer be used as a crutch, especially after the prologue of Dominion featured an Argentinian Giganotosaurus that looks exactly the same as its cloned counterpart, roaming North America 30 million years too late and squaring off with the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Many of the world dinosaurs have a wet, wrinkly plastic look to them, with heavily desaturated color palettes compared to the original movies. Stegosaurs droop their tails, Pteranodons look more like giant bats, the Dimorphodons have Rex head syndrome and look like background aliens from Star Wars. The Mosasaur is enormous and far too crocodilian. Similarly, most theropods are visually characterized more like crocodiles instead of birds or other types of lizards. And the one time they finally made a fully feathered raptor, they gave it the ugliest monster face possible. These prehistoric reptiles are not only ugly, but are treated with an insultingly mean-spirited monster movie irreverence. Pterosaurs are shot out of the sky, collapsing onto concrete. Herds of sauropods are mauled and left to die in misery. Raptors are blown up with rocket launchers and kitchen stoves, or fall out of planes. And an entire island of coexisting dinosaurs plummet to their watery graves after escaping a cloud of black volcanic ash. These moments aren't always intended to be viewed in a positive light, but this just means the films can employ as much gruesome dinosaur death as they like, if it means a cheap tug on the heartstrings for the audience. Not every scene needs to be full of whimsical awe, that would get repetitive, but the excessive cruelty on display is just disrespectful to the core appeal of the series.
It's important in these movies that the animals never be characterized as villains, because they're not. They're just there doing what they do. It's when the humans come in conflict with one another through greed or hate that they find themselves sort of at the mercy of the animals.
If Jurassic World wants us to believe that no one cares about dinosaurs anymore, becoming mundane and familiar due to the existence of the park, an analog to the audience's relationship with the franchise itself, why does it show us crowds of people ecstatic to see the Tyrannosaurus, or the Mosasaur, or the petting zoo, in the one place on Earth where these animals are viewable to the public? Of course people still love dinosaurs, and the billion-dollar returns of this series prove that people still love the original Jurassic Park, and want to recapture that experience again. But what's left now is a shadow of its former self, Its success derived from inheritance of the Jurassic Park label, getting butts in seats from name recognition, and being the only major live-action film series about dinosaurs.
He's exploiting your enchantment with these.
I refuse to believe these films inspire a new generation in the same way that Jurassic Park once did, due to their treatment of dinosaurs as either bloodthirsty monsters or fodder for shoehorned nostalgic sadness. The Jurassic World films have been released in an era where these kinds of nostalgic cash grabs are commonplace, and in a climate of critical apathy surrounding major blockbuster films.
Endless trash!
The rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the discourse surrounding it from popular figures online have conditioned audiences to trade standalone quality storytelling for non-stop action spectacle and obnoxious dialogue. Movies aren't meant to be good anymore. They're meant to pacify you for 2 hours and advertise the next 5 movies in their post-credit scenes, fueling clickbait speculation online that keeps the ball rolling while waiting for that next teaser trailer. It's incredibly rare to see a modern film that meets halfway, maintaining broad appeal without becoming shallow corporate sludge. It seems that even with these modern expectations, certain commonly accepted viewpoints still exist to oppose it. Terminator and Alien are known for their incredible second entries that are sometimes considered superior to the original, but are then followed by a spew of far worse stories to follow. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 was a phenomenal film, but few say the same for the infamous mess that is Spider-Man 3. The Godfather Part 2 is one of the most beloved sequels of all time, but the third is always left out of this conversation. It is not inherently impossible to create a good film sequel, but they require a strong vision, and an ability to at least somewhat maintain the tone of the original, without retreading the same ground. If it's not controversial to say that Alien and Terminator should have stopped at number 2, then Jurassic Park should be held to the same standard. The Lost World was enough, made clear by the abysmal Jurassic Park 3. Film sequels in particular pose a dangerous threat more so than many other genres of entertainment, as big-budget studio films continue to dominate the box office and push smaller, lower-budget films to the wayside. Quality filmmaking in the independent space is reserved for limited releases, which are very easy to miss, while Spider-Man Left His Wallet at Home has multiple showings per day for weeks or months after its release. It's a rare sight for a new IP to receive box office acclaim. 44 of the top 50 highest-grossing films of 2021 were sequels or based upon and/or featuring elements from existing intellectual property, like books, stage plays, video games, and theme park rides. Compare this to video games, a medium where small independent releases can triumph alongside giant AAA titles, sharing the front page on Steam or the best sellers list on the Nintendo eShop. Games also benefit from the iteration of sequels, focusing on improving mechanics and taking advantage of newer hardware and software, as they often don't strictly rely on storytelling as their core strength in the same way as film and literature. This medium is a goldmine critically and financially that Jurassic World has shockingly left undisturbed. Many people are challenged by this suggestion of letting franchises go, believing that the same things must continue indefinitely, producing a never-ending armada of capital C content for their consumption, and preventing newer stories from gaining footing in the industry. Why watch something new when you could watch a prequel story about young John Hammond, or the 33rd season of The Simpsons? Unfortunately, this is a product of modern popular culture and influencer content, encouraging people to base their entire personalities around corporations.
I've been busting my fucking ass being a Star Wars fan for 5 fucking years on the show.
Going to bat for their box office results, begging for extended universe material, antagonizing those who criticize the brand, and generally behaving like fucking parasites, desperately awaiting an invitation to a red carpet premiere among the Hollywood elite. This isn't dissimilar from Funko Pop collecting parents turning their children into slobbering billboards of their own interests, praying that the next generation never gets anything original to connect with, only being exposed to the same things said parents were already attached to from their own youth. This incessant regurgitation of IP from the late 20th century has conditioned grown adults to latch onto their childhood in a way that oversteps harmless fun and encroaches on a near-abusive shunning of new ideas, blocking a new generation from forming their own interests. When do our children get to have their own Star Wars or Jurassic Park without just being another Star Wars or Jurassic Park film? Unlike replacing the best attractions at major theme parks, older movies don't have to disappear, so long as you're not relying on shoddy streaming services. They can have their moment in the sun upon release and still be rewatched endlessly in the future, while new stories get to emerge alongside them. You can love the old while still being ready to embrace the truly new. This is coming from someone who was featured in an official Jurassic Park toy commercial, but you won't see me sucking up to companies like a pathetic leech.
Jurassic World? Not a fan.
Realistically, what should Jurassic Park have done? Should it have ended after its second or third entry and been left alone forever? Is such a thing even possible in this nostalgia-fueled era of Hollywood? One series, one story, has dodged the corporate curse for over 3 decades. It's the only movie franchise I can think of where the proposal of another film is met with universal vitriol from its core fanbase, despite the desire from general audiences. This is, of course, the greatest film trilogy of all time.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do Back to the Future anymore. 3 is enough, 3 is a good number.
And that's all there will ever be of Back to the Future.
Enough is enough.
We actually had t-shirts made up that had Back to the Future 4 with a circle and a slash through the Roman numeral 4.
Back to the Future? No.
At the end of part 3, it says, "The End." Something you rarely see at the end of any movie anymore.
Back to the Future 4 never happening. Stop asking me the question.
Nope. It's a trilogy. At the rate Hollywood is going with additional movies, it may end up being the only trilogy.
So I think 3 is the perfect amount of sequels that any movie should be done.
No remakes, no Back to the Future Part 4.
It's true that the sequels to Back to the Future were also a result of corporate interest. The first film performed so well that Universal requested more, with or without Zemeckis and Gale's involvement. Not only did they manage to craft 2 incredible sequels, an idea that never occurred to them during production of the original, but they obtained creative rights to the series as a means of blocking any further installments from production.
And as long as Bob Zemeckis and I have something to say about it, it will remain a trilogy.
Back to the Future ended on a high note in 1990, living on through the hearts of fans worldwide, remembered as a series of timeless classics. Just because there aren't any new films releasing today doesn't mean that new generations can't just watch what already exists.
25 years after this film comes out, it's still going to be having almost the same interest and viewers as it did when it opened.
9, 10-year-old kids, they know the movies backwards and forwards. It's amazing.
Back to the Future lives on in popular culture, for better or worse, with supplementary merchandise like toys, comic books, video games, and a Broadway musical adaptation, keeping the series alive without tarnishing its image. It's ironic that its beloved theme park ride was replaced by The Simpsons, a zombified television show that refuses to die, regardless of its critical reception. The absolute total opposite of Back to the Future. There's no reason Jurassic Park couldn't have followed in Back to the Future's footsteps. Continue producing their wonderful toy lines for kids and adult collectors, develop video games like the already successful Evolution series and something more akin to the survival horror of Dino Crisis, and maybe the occasional non-canon cartoon series or spin-off. Almost 30 years after its release, Jurassic Park is beloved by many. You can still buy figures of the legacy characters like Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm, 4K Blu-rays of every film, adult-tailored Lego sets of the Tyrannosaur breakout, dozens of expensive statues for enthusiastic collectors, and countless other merchandise themed specifically around the first film. Will the same ever be said of Jurassic World? In 30 years from now, who's going to care enough to rush to Target to secure the latest clone baby Funko Pop? Does anyone even care now? Without a time machine of our own, it's not possible to repair Jurassic Park's reputation by ending the series in 1997 or 2001. But it can avoid further missteps if the right calls are made now, in the present day. After all, the future is what we make of it, so let's make it a good one. To whom it may concern, please stop making Jurassic Park movies. Thank you for watching.